Welcome to the MadHouse Podcast, a safe place where we discuss the things that have been on our mind. So sit back, relax, as we dive deep down into the rabbit hole to see how far it goes. We'd like to welcome y'all to the MadHouse Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing fear. But before that, I want to go ahead and take time to address some of the comments and suggestions that we got. We got some good feedback and some things that we want to let everyone know that we're working on. We discussed amongst ourselves, so we want to let you know that thanks and improvements to the show will be made. I think we both feel the same way on that.
We definitely do. Like I said, we definitely value everybody's opinion, and we appreciate the feedback and the constructive criticism. Ain't nobody been like an asshole or anything, so everybody's been, been very respectful in the things that they're saying, and we really, really appreciate all the comments, all the feedback, everything. So keep sending us, your suggestions and whatnot, and we'll try to put that into practice and make this show even better than it already is.
Absolutely. Like I said, I wanted to go ahead and just hit that real quick so people know that, hey, yeah, we are listening, and we're taking that into account. But going on into fear. Now, I think the biggest part of fear with me is less of a fear of self-doubt, and it's more internalized as a paranoia. Like, I have like this internal paranoid person inside me. He's crazy. And I don't understand why he's so crazy, but he is. And I think it's because of past experiences. Like I said, I was like sexually abused as a child. Yeah. Or sexually assaulted, I want to say. You say sexually abused. Someone thinks in your family.
Yeah.
Someone thinks, someone in your family. No.
There is a difference in the two.
Like I said, I was sexually assaulted before, and so it kind of shapes my outlook of the world. And that fear has manifested in a different way now that I have kids. And I think more so than anything, that would be my biggest fear. Because I always have this looming doubt in my mind about the safety of my kids. Because I always feel like there's someone lurking. Yeah. And I know it's not necessarily true. But there was a time, and I'm trying to get over it now. But there was a time when I could barely sleep. I could probably sleep maybe 3-4 hours a night. I mean, I still kind of do it now.
You're still doing the same thing.
But that's because of the habit. I had built up a habit of only sleeping 2-3 hours a night, maybe 4 at the most, from that fear, and it became a habit. And I would stay up so late because I didn't want to go to bed because I always wanted to be alert and ready just in case someone pulled up in the house. Yeah. Like, if I went to bed and laid down, I would have nightmares that while I was asleep, someone was creeping in trying to hurt my kids while I was asleep. So it would keep me up. And it was a real struggle. And like I said, my daughter is nine now. She's my oldest child. So it started with her. My son's 5. But it started with my daughter because obviously she's my firstborn. And I still remember the moment she was born. And I remember putting my hand over her, and she reached up with her little hand and she grabbed my finger. And it was like an unspoken conversation, a promise, like, I'll always protect you, I'll always take care of you, I'll always love you. And I think that's when my fear transferred from me to my children. Because I had always had that internal fear from that childhood stressor, that traumatic event seated deep inside me. And now I had a child. And so it transferred to my children because now I saw them vulnerable as I was vulnerable. And I was so scared that anything would happen to them because I knew something bad had happened to me. And I wanted to do whatever I could as a parent to shield them from anything.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to feel any pain or fear. And it's something that I have to personally, like, step back from. Because I know that too much shielding will be a detriment to growth. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I definitely agree, man. And I get what you're saying, and I hear you, because, like, I also obviously have a son, and I felt some of those same things, and I felt some of that paranoia as well. So you're not alone in these feelings. Like, obviously, when you have a child, everything changes. You know, I want to say that we've all had that moment when your child is first born, and you walk over, and they got all the cheese and everything all over them on their little bodies, and they're all white, and they're looking all crazy, and, like, head hasn't really conformed to anything yet, and you look at them, and, like, the first on your mind is, like, you're here now. Like, you weren't here previously. You're just like this bump in your mom's stomach, and, like, now you're here. And now my whole life has just changed. Like, I had that same moment, like, when Jaco, he grabbed my finger. Like, I'm like, hello, son. He reaches up and he grabs my finger, and I'm just like, from that moment, everything in my life was about him. Like, he's the only thing I care about. It was like, well, obviously at that point I cared about his mom and him, but he became the focal point of my life. And no one wants anything bad to happen to their children.
Yeah.
But I can relate to that because I've had some of those same fears. Like, I would, I felt, even when he wasn't even here yet, when his mom was, like, pregnant, there were just times where I was like, man, this is crazy, dude. Like, I tried to avoid any and all situations that put them in danger. Like, I didn't want to get into it with nobody because, like, anytime, if I got into it with anybody over my son's mom and him in the oven, and the first thing, I'm like, I'm finna kill this dude. Like, I don't give a fuck what it is. Like, I have to kill you now because you're trying to harm my child.
Yeah, they put you in a bad space. And I remember talking to Pops about this because it had gotten so bad where, like, it was really eating at me, and, like, it was almost to the point where, like, I couldn't function. And it was funny. It was like, because when people on the outside, not really knowing and just seeing you in your situation, I know a lot of times people probably be like, oh, well, man, it seems like, Nat's not really doing nothing, or, like, Nat's like, he's not making any moves, he's just kind of slowed down. And I said, man, there's so much stuff I want to do, but people don't know, like, I'm struggling. It's like, it's so hard to want to progress when I'm struggling to function. Yeah. I can barely sleep. I'm this fear is consuming me. And a recurring dream I had was someone would try to come in, and I would have to fight them off. But, like, they had already gotten in. Yeah. So, like, at that point, I'm already behind the curve. And now I feel bad because it's like, I went to sleep and someone got in. Yeah. I failed. Like, my kids are calling me. If they're calling me, I've already failed. I wasn't there. Yeah. And so this fear got deep inside of me. And I remember, like I said, having this conversation with Pop. And I said, I don't know how you did it because I don't know how to function without this fear. And I remember he told me, I didn't fear anything because there's some stuff I just can't control. He said, I'm not saying I'm not going to do anything to protect you. I do what I can to mitigate any situation, and I do the best I can do. But outside of that, I don't worry about y'all because I put it in God's hands. And I was like, I didn't understand it when he told me. I'm like, well, no, I have to control this. I have to do this. He said, do what you can do, but don't try to control the whole situation. He said, because you're not in control. He said, you just do what's reasonable as a parent and put everything else in God's hands. That's all you can do. And I didn't understand that. I mean, like, do you see where he's coming from? Like, I couldn't understand at the time, but I mean, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I get where he's coming from, and obviously everybody is different. Everybody feels differently. Like, Pops, he's never been an emotional dude. he's always been very, very like laid back, very chill, and I am far from that. Like I'm an emotional dude. Like I take everything, not everything, but I take a lot of things to heart, especially when it's like dealing with my family. Like they're my son is the number one thing I care about in my life. So any and everything with him, I take very personal, and it could be something small. Like you remember when like you forgot to call him on his birthday?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I feel like that to me. That stayed with me for a while. I ain't talked to you for a couple of days because I was upset with you. Like I was really mad, and like it took me a couple of days, and like after like a week, I came back and was like I ain't asked for no apology. I ain't asked for you to say nothing. I just want to tell you how I feel about this situation, and I told you what I felt, and you said okay, and that was cool with me. I just wanted to tell you the way I felt, but that's just me being emotional. Like that's just me letting my emotions out, and like anything that has to do with my son, even like. When he was first born, I was terrible, like, because he's my baby. Like, he literally fits in the palm of my hands. Like, I want to protect him at all costs, and I don't give a fuck who it is or what it is. So when he would go to daycare, like, there were times where, like, I have no control over that situation. He's in daycare, but he would get bit, or, like, he would come home with a scratch, and, like, I'm up there, I'm ready to burn the whole fucking daycare down. With everybody inside, I'm like, okay, let me get my son, I'm about to burn this bitch down. Because I feel like you're coming at my son, but like it took time, and I had to start to learn. I was like, okay, I want to shut this shit down, but I was like, listen, I can't control. Kids will be kids. I can't control everything that happens. I have to learn to teach Jaco to do X, Y, and Z, and I have to show him by example, like how to conduct yourself when things don't go your way. Yeah. So I can't just always go off the deep end. Like if I'm upset, I can't just go, because children are so impressionable and they pick up on everything like this. So if he sees me reacting one way, he'll just assume like, oh, okay, well this is the way that things are handled. You know, Dad was unhappy about this, so you know he walked in my classroom and he kicked the damn door down and he started breaking stuff. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And I don't want that from my son. Like I have to learn to take a step back, and I have to learn that I'm not in control of life in all of its aspects. I'm only in control of the things that I'm in control of.
And that's the hardest part, because I couldn't grasp that. Yeah. And I had to sit back and say, you know what? I have to let God take care of the situation, because in reality, I don't really control anything. Like I don't. Like it's in God's hands.
You'll adjust to
I'll
whatever
adjust
happens.
I'll adjust to whatever happens. And it was hard for me, but I had to do it because the fear was overwhelmingly affecting my life in such a way that I couldn't function, and that was turning into a detriment for my children and how I parent. So I had to make adjustments for that. Now, that's one of the things I've been getting better at. I've been trying to give them more responsibility. I have been opening myself up to letting them live life and make mistakes and go to bed feeling that it's okay if I go to bed. I shouldn't feel bad for going to sleep. Like I shouldn't feel like if I sleep I'm a bad parent because my eyes aren't always on the kids. And I think that it was fine for me for a while, because as a military guy, like it was nothing. It's like, okay, it's basically like Firewatch. I'm like, you know, at nighttime, you got like you might get 2 hours of rack time, and then okay, it's back to post, and you stay up and you watch over through the night, and then you might get to go back. You know, you might have about 6-7 hours, and then you might get about 2-3 more hours of sleep, and then you gotta get back up for patrols, and then same thing. You go back at nighttime. Lay down for 2 hours before your fire watch, and you get up and you're watching your post. So I was already used to that, but I don't think it was sustainable on an everyday type of level. And I think that was the biggest part. I was doing it every day, so this was very harmful for me, and it's a fear that I'm trying to overcome now.
And that's good. Like I'm glad that you're kind of opening up and working through this. Like I said, I share some of those same fears that you have. I guess my fear is like it's in the same realm, but it's a little bit different. Like one of the biggest fears that I struggle with right now is the fear of failure as a father. Like I think that we all have, in a sense, a certain fear of failure. Nobody wants to fail at anything, but in my particular case, I struggle very much so with like feeling like I'm failing my son. And it could be it's little stuff, and I know sometimes it's irrational, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense because I know that I'm a great father, and I know that I would do any and everything for my son. Like I literally would walk to the end of the world for him, for whatever. But there are just times where I feel like I'm not doing my job as a father, and a lot of a lot of it's just stupid. Like if I wasn't able to be at one of his appointments, and like, I like to think that I'm always present and always do everything, but if I can't make one thing, it's like I'm giving myself shit for it. I'm like, oh, so you can't fucking go to your son's appointment? Like you couldn't have woke up an hour early to go? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but I mean, I just got off work and I'm tired. Okay, you piece of shit. You ain't gonna go to your son. So now I feel like I'm letting him down, even though in my mind, I know that it's irrational and it doesn't make any sense because whether I made it to a basketball game, a soccer game, whatever, that doesn't define you as a good or bad father. It just the things that you do as his father make you a good father. So I've struggled with that as a fear because I just don't want to let my son down. And he's a child now, so he doesn't see any of my flaws. He doesn't see any of my weaknesses or anything. All he knows is what he sees. Like all he knows is the good. He knows that dad is here, dad is present, he plays with me, he tickles me, he laughs. He sees all the good things that I do, but as he gets older, he'll start to see my flaws. He'll start to see his own opinion of me, and he'll start to form this ideal of what I am and what a man should be based off of what I've shown him. And I just don't want there to be a time where I'm letting my son down, or I guess I don't want to say I'm letting him down, or I feel as though I'm letting my son down because regardless of what anybody says, I'm still in my mind. That's what I'm striving for. I'm chasing that okay, don't let Jay go down. Don't do this. Don't do that.
Let me ask you this. Is your fear more internalized as I'm reflecting my thoughts on myself, or does your fear come from you projecting him having negative thoughts onto yourself? Like, is it more of an internal, like, oh, you're a piece of shit, or do you actually fear, like, I feel like I'm, like, if I don't do something, he's gonna feel like I'm a crap dad? Is it more like that, or is it more internal? Like, do you feel like he's gonna look at you like, because I think it's kind of different. Like, where you're like, I feel like I'm doing this, and if I feel like I don't make X, Y, and Z, I have this fear that I'm gonna be a failure as a father. Versus, I feel like if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I see when he looks at me, I feel like he's unhappy or looking down, or I feel like he's looking at me as a failure. Like, I think it's totally different. So like I'm just trying to like which way do you come from that? Do you feel you are the failure to yourself, or do you fear him looking at you as a failure?
I guess if I had to peg it, I would have to say I'm looking at myself as a failure. And I say that to say this. When I think about a father, I think about my own dad. And I look at everything that my dad did, and I want to be the same father. I don't want to say the same. I want to be comparable. If I can even be half the father that my dad was to us, that's what I strive for. Like, I want my son to look at me and know that I've taught him lessons, and I've left him with something in life. Like, I've given him guidance. I've taught him. Like, I look at my own father, and I'm like, my dad wasn't perfect. My dad made mistakes, but I always looked at him with reverence and respect, and I'm like, well, that's my dad, because I saw those things that he did for me. Like, I saw, like, that extra mile that he went, and like I said, I always tell that same story, and it seems so, it really don't seem like much, and it may not seem like much to anybody, but to me, I'll always remember that it was this one day. We lived out in Duncanville, and Dad lived in Pleasant Grove, and I had clothes over Dad's house, and I had left my Dallas Mavericks jersey over there. And remember, Dad was working, so he working in Pleasant Grove, and I was going to school. And the next day was like Spirit Day or some shit, where you could wear like your team's jersey to school, and I didn't have my jersey because it was at Dad's house. And I was talking to Dad, and I guess I was feeling a little upset, and he was like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, tomorrow's Jersey Day and I don't have my jersey to wear. I'm just, I guess I'm just bothered by it. Pops drove from Pleasant, like he had to go home, even after he got where he had to drive home, get it, and then bring it to me, just so I can have it for that next day. Like, to me that meant something, because he didn't have to do that. He could just be like, well, hey, you'll deal with it, it's fine. In hindsight, it really wasn't that big a deal. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is like the pinnacle of my middle school years. It was just a regular day. It was just a regular Thursday or Friday. Nothing special about it. It was just Spirit Day. And he was willing to get off work, go home, get the jersey, bring it to me, and then drive all the way back home. Like, he was willing to do that for me. And it's those are the kind of memories that I take forward and I remember, because to me, that meant something. Yeah. Like, even when I was like 13, 14, that meant, like, he showed me something that day. Like, Dad never was like a I love you kind of person. He was never like, man, I love you. I can probably count on one hand how many times he done said it. But, like, there were those moments that he showed me how much he cared about me. And that's what I want for so that's what I strive to be. Like, I want to be like that for my son, where he can look at the things that I'm doing. I don't have to always say it, but he can feel it, and he knows that I care about him, and he knows that I'm doing everything I can do in his best interest, even though it's not always going to be a spoken thing. Sometimes, it'll just be like, well, I know my dad loves me. He cares. He shows me all the time. Like,
so it's more of like a self-imposed fear. Like, I think my fear was more like a reaction to a traumatic event that happened, and this is good. Like, it's two different. Like, everyone has different fears, and like all fears are valid. And yours is more of a self-imposed fear. As I've seen an example of great fatherhood in my father, and I have a fear of not meeting that standard now that I am a father.
Meet that expectation.
And so, it's two different types of fears, but I think it's valid that, and I think we have to address them and have to realize that, hey, these are real things and they affect us regardless what your fear may be. Yeah. And I'm glad we're having this talk now, and like I have to address myself. And I told you, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago when we went to the store, like, yeah, I'm just trying to give them some more space, let the kids stay at home. I would never have done that before, but like, I'm trying to do stuff like that now, within reason. Like I said, I wouldn't go out and be like, okay, hey kids, I'll be back in like 3 or 4 hours. Like, I wouldn't do that. Like, if it's like a 10, 15 minute thing and they can say it, but it's giving them that leeway. So, like, transitioning into how we cope with these fears, I think that my way of coping with my fear is giving more freedom to the children and letting them make decisions and mistakes, and learning how to not be so quick to jump the gun, because I find that I get very agitated and upset really quick, and I snap on the kids because I'm afraid. I'm like, no, you can't do that. This is bad. And I'm so scared for them. But I have to realize that I cannot project my fears onto them, because that will turn them into fearful children. Yeah. I want them to be willing and ready to accept failure, and know that it's okay, and know that I'm not going to scold them or jump at them every time they make a mistake. But I did not realize this and think that I needed to make a change until I noticed whenever my kids would do something, I would yell and they would instantly become afraid. And mind you, I don't hit the kids. I don't spank them at all. But the fact that my voice was causing fear in my children, and like I said, they know I don't spank them. They know I'm not going to physically hurt them. But my voice caused fear in them. And I had to look at that and say, what is the issue here? I don't want my kids to feel fear. What is the root? And I said, it's because of my fear, and I'm projecting my fear onto them. And this is something I need to address. And that's when I started to take hold of that and address it. And it's a slow progression because these are deep-seated fears.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 35. These are fears that have been lingering since I was around 10.
Mm.
So 25 years worth of, you know,
Yeah.
pain,
Fear-mongering.
pain and fear and pent up emotions. So I have to process this in a slow fashion, but I have to acknowledge it while also saying I need to encourage growth in my kids so that they do not develop the same fears and they do not develop the same problems that I had growing up. So I think this is good for me. Now, as far as you, like, what are you doing to cope? Like, what actions are you taking and steps in your acknowledgement of your fear and how to make it better?
So I've been going to counseling for quite a while now. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that I've probably been going to counseling for almost like 3 or 4 years now. And during all that, you know, I've already voiced some of these concerns to my counselor, and he's given me some tools to kind of cope with it better. And one of the biggest ones he's given me is to challenge those, like challenge the thoughts and ideas that I have. So, you know, say I have a thought like, oh man, if I don't get Jaco these new shoes, I'm a failure as a father. And he was like, okay, well that's obviously not one of them, but like for an example, he was like, all right, well then challenge that. Like, okay, does Jaco have shoes? Well, yeah. All right, then, okay, so do you not have the money to do it? Well, yeah, I got the money. So you have the money. Jaco has shoes. He doesn't really need them right now. How are you a failure as a father? It ain't like you can't afford them. It ain't like he doesn't have shoes. Like, how are you a failure? You have to start challenging those thoughts whenever they pop in your head as to, like, go against the grain and backward, like, work it from the back. Like, hey, I'm not a father. I mean, I'm not a failure because I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm still a good person. I still have worth. Like, I'm still present in my son's life. So that's one of the biggest things is like challenging those thoughts that I've been having. If I don't think I'm a good dad because I wasn't able to do something, I could still be a good dad but miss a basketball game. I could still be a good dad and I don't get to see him all the time. Like right now I only get to see him 3 times a month. Like I only get to see him on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th weekend. Like I don't get to see him any more than that. Like I was able to, but that's a story for another day. As of right now I can't see him more than that. So I have to be okay with that, and like I have to cope with not being able to see him as much, but I have to make the most out of the time that I have. So
let me ask you this: what point are you at in your progression? Are you instantly acknowledge? When I say instantly, I mean like as soon as it happens, even if you slip up and you make a mistake, do you? I've made this mistake. I've seen it. I know I need to adjust. Or are you at that point where it's like you might have made a mistake? And it might be that night before you go to bed, you reflect on, you know what, earlier today, or it might have been the next day, yesterday. Like, have you got to the point where like you can instantly see it?
No.
And say like, okay, I just had this thought. I'm feeding into fear. Okay, I need to address it right now. I'm kind of at that point now where I can like, in my personal journey, where I can see it and say, I need to adjust. Because I've learned I have to keep quiet. So when I say I have to keep quiet, because the kids will do something and I'll get upset. And I'll say, hey, don't do this because this bad thing will happen. They do things that they weren't supposed to do. Something bad happens. I get upset and I will jump. Okay, you're grounded. You're never, because they wanted to cook. So, prime example, Pablo wants to stir his noodles. And I said, no, I don't want you in the kitchen. It's bad. So I'm like, okay, well, you want to stir and help me in the kitchen, that's fine. I make sure the oven has been off and cooled down. I tell him, hey, you grab this handle, don't touch it or whatever. So I try to do it as safe as possible. I know, like, stir slowly. And one time he gets a little too excited and a little juice of hot water kind of hits his face and he freaks out. Oh, no. And then at that point, I instantly snapped. This is why I didn't want you to do it. Now you see what happens what can happen in the kitchen. Get out of here. You're never coming in the kitchen again. Don't ever ask me to help me cook again. Never. And then after I said that, I was like, okay, I just messed up. Because now I'm I'm in a situation where I'm gonna have to contradict myself because I'm gonna have to go back on my word. I just said don't do this, never do this. Then I'm gonna have to turn around and say, okay, I'm sorry, you can do this. But I instantly acknowledge, okay, I said what's wrong, and then I'll say, breathe, give it a minute. Okay, I'm sorry, bud. Daddy makes mistakes too. Let's work on that. So I'm at that point now, and I think that's a good point of my journey. But you yourself, you said you're more of maybe like midday or maybe next day when you realize that you've fed into that fear and you're making adjustments.
I don't know. Like I don't think I'm definitely not at that point right now. Like I'm not there. I don't know. I'm at a point where, it all depends on how I'm feeling for that day. Like it could take me hours. It could take me minutes. It may take me some days. Like it all depends on how severe in my mind the situation was, and I guess how I addressed it and what I did. It all depends. Like I try to stay out of the rabbit hole as much as I can, but there are times where I just find myself in that rabbit hole again, and like that hole of depression, and I'm trying to find my way out of it. But sometimes I just stay there for a while, and I'm not saying it's a good nor bad thing. It's just I know what's going on. I'm aware of it. I stay in that hole for a little while because sometimes I just want to wallow in my own self forfeit. I'm just like, I just want to be here. Like I just want to feel sad for whatever reason. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to feel sad sometimes, or just wanting to have your time to kind of feel the way you're feeling. Like I just want to feel like this right now. Like I don't necessarily want to fix it. I just want to feel the way that I'm feeling. But I at least realize that about myself, and I know that's what I want. But I know
processing.
I can't. Yeah, but I know I can't stay here. Like I know, at some point I'm like, all right, now let's. I need to go ahead and get up out this hole. Like I need to go ahead and move forward. Everything's not so bad. Everything is cool. Like let's do our coping mechanisms. Let's challenge all these negative thoughts that I'm having. Okay, we've already challenged them. We found them not to be valid. Okay, now we can move forward. Like you're not a bad dad. You're not failing as his dad. Like you're doing a good job. Like I swear, there's just times where I'm like my own worst enemy. Like as much progress as I've made, it feels like sometimes I'm working twice as hard to put myself down, and I'm working on that too. Like I'm trying to work on it from all sides, not just from my own mental health and my own sanity. I'm working on it because I want to be better for my son. Like I want to be better for him so he can see that, hey, life is hard. Times are going to be challenging. You're going to have to go through trials. You're going to have tribulations. You're going to have ups and downs. Good times are just like bad times. They don't last. Like neither one will last. Both of them will start. Both of them will end. And you just have to be able to dance in the rain so you can appreciate the sunshine. And that's kind of where I am now. I'm just acknowledging the fact that like I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. But I don't need to be perfect to be a good father. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm like, I have my setbacks, but at the same time I realize that I'll never be a perfect father. And my dad was his own man. He was his own, he was just like, he was his own man. I'm going to be my own man, but I'm going to take the lessons my father taught me, and I'm going to apply them to me and my son's dynamic.
Absolutely.
And then, and I hope that when my son gets older and he has children, he'll take those same lessons, and he won't want to be like me. Because I don't want my son to be like me. I want him to be better than me. Don't just be like me. Be better than me. So I want him to take all the things that I've taught him, and in essence that my dad has taught me, give them to my son, and I have to leave that and say, hey, look, this is your thing. I've given you all the information. Now you have to choose what to do with it, and I have to learn to take that step back and just be okay with that.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to end the show on what you just said about you're not going to be perfect. I think it's something that we both kind of taken up recently about don't strive for perfection, strive for progression. And I think I've kind of like taken that up too, and I think that's a good place to end it. Like, if we all strive for progression, and I'm progressing on my fears and controlling and acknowledging them, I feel like you're progressing and you're acknowledging. We're at different points right now, different stages, and that's fine. Everyone has a different pace.
Yeah, different journeys.
And that's fine. And if we all strive for that progression and we all strive to be better, I can do it. You can do it. I'm sure everyone out there, y'all can do it as well. If there's any fears that you're going through, they might not be the same fears that we're feeling, but if you apply the same thing as, hey, I'm acknowledging, and then how do you address it? Acknowledge and address. You have to address it instantly if possible. I think is the best solution to immediately do it. Just like I didn't want to go to the gym. You said, hey, we're going right now. We're immediately doing it. Yeah. So we immediately did it.
I had to pull up on your ass like, hey, let's go. Like, I'm outside. You're like, oh, you're out. You said 15 minutes. I was like, I'm outside, bro. Let's go. Like, you didn't want to go today. And like I said, you got a lot of content for your IG and stuff like that. But I'm proud of you for going. But you have a sense of accomplishment about yourself now that you. So backstory is, I woke up this morning. I wanted to go to the gym. He don't have the kids today. I just pulled up on his ass. I was like, hey, let's go to the gym. And at first, he acted like he didn't want to pick up the phone. Because I had to call him like twice, maybe 3 times.
Well, no, I was actually sleeping.
Yeah.
I was actually asleep. And then I was like, okay. Then he said, okay, we're going to, the kids aren't there. Well, we're going to the gym. And so that fear kicked in. I started,
hello?
Oh, I can't hear you, man. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that was a good time. You'll probably see that on the Instagram. But, again, I want to thank everyone coming out for the show. Had a good one today. And continue to progress and work on your fears as well. And we'll all strive for that together. See you next time.
Take it easy, y'all. Thanks for tuning in with us today. Hopefully we were able to give you something you can use and take forward into your day. If you want to reach out to us with any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic requests, links are in the description. Join us back here again next week in the MadHouse. We appreciate you and where you are in your journey in life. And always remember, we're all quite mad here. You'll fit right in.